Hey everybody, and welcome to Bacon Ninja FPV. I thought I'd make this video for all of you noob pilots out there that are in the same boat I've been in for the last 3 months, where FPV is just a huge learning curve and there's a whole lot of things you don't know yet, and there's some things that I wish someone had told me when I started 12 weeks ago in this hobby. I wish someone had sat me down and told me a few things, so I'm going to sit down and tell you those things right now. So first of all, what I would like to say is that yes, I have been flying for 12 weeks as of this week. That is 3 months. So 3 months ago, I started flying in the simulator, and then I picked up a novice 4 kit shortly thereafter, and then I built my own 5-inch quads shortly thereafter, and I've been flying those for the past couple of months, and this is kind of where I started. And this is where I'm at now with my flying. So you can see there's been a little bit of progress. I'm pretty happy with that. But like I said, there are a few things that I've learned in the past 12 weeks that I wish someone had told me when I first started FPV, and I really want to share those things with you so that you don't wait 3 months to figure them out like I did. So I'm just going to jump straight into the first one, and that is nobody cares about your flight edits. They are super cool to you, and that is perfect. But nobody cares about them. And that's a hard lesson to learn. So you're really excited because you started flying FPV drones and it's a whole new world to you, and you want to share that with everybody, and that is terrific. But they just aren't going to care about your flight edits. They've forgotten what the learning curve is like if they're FPV pilots. They've forgotten what the stage of that journey is like and how appreciative of that they should be. And people who don't have any idea what FPV is just can't truly appreciate your edits. It's not your fault. There's nothing against you as a pilot. They just don't have any empathy for it at this stage of your progression. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't be recording your flights, because I wholeheartedly believe that you should be recording everything at this point. Your DVR footage, your GoPro, your HD footage, anything you can get your hands on to record, you should be doing right now. You should be also making the edits, because now is the time to learn how to put together a good flight edit, to get practice at putting the flight edits together, timing them with music, adding LUTs and doing filtering and stylization in your videos and using an editing program. If that's something you're interested in as part of FPV, now is the perfect time to be doing that. Just don't go into it with any expectations that someone else is going to care at all about the edits you're producing, because there's a high likelihood that they aren't. Again, that's not against you as a pilot. You may have well above average piloting skills at this point. You may be doing things that are pretty far advanced. You may not be. That's perfectly fine. Everybody learns at different rates. What I will say is all of the recorded footage you have now is going to mean something to you down the road when you look back at your progression. So I know that the videos I took in my first month are very different than the videos I'm taking now, and I like to kind of go back and look at them because I can see where I've progressed and the things that I've learned, and it's something to be proud of, for sure. And I'm really looking forward to a year from now, when I've been doing this for a year and I look back at some of my first flight edits. It's for you, it's not for anybody else. Don't expect other people to have any reaction to your flight edits. If you're in FPV, in order to get those reactions, it's going to be a tough game for you. You really have to enjoy this hobby for what it is and be willing to follow the steep learning curve of it because you love it, not because you want people to watch your videos. So don't go into those situations with expectations, or you are likely to be disappointed. So the second thing that I wish I had been told is that you need to spend less time learning tricks. So we all get into this hobby, or I think a lot of us get into this hobby after having watched some other FPV video that really impressed us and seeing what kind of opportunity this could bring into our lives and the kind of cool stuff we get to do as FPV pilots. Because frankly, people who don't do FPV have no idea how amazing some of the stuff we get to do as FPV pilots is, and the things and perspectives we see that nobody else does. It's mind-blowing, the kind of cool stuff we get to do. And we know that. But we want to get in it to do the tricks, because we saw awesome tricks in these videos, and we want to learn how to do those tricks. And there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to just pick up my controller, and once I've learned how to hover, start doing Rubik's Cubes. That's not possible. You really need to spend a lot of time with the fundamentals. So when you pick up your controller and you start in the simulator, you've got to learn how to fly smoothly. You may even want to learn how to fly through gates and do some racing courses before you really get into doing tricks. I started in Liftoff, which is a pretty popular simulator. I actually started out with a Google Stadia gamepad, so not even an actual radio. And the first thing I did was find a pretty simple race course and take myself through it. And I would not give up on it. I mean, I would sit there for a long period of time until I could get through all the gates smoothly without crashing. Which, if anybody out there has tried to do that as a noob, it is incredibly difficult. There's a large learning curve to understanding how the aircraft works, especially if you don't have anyone to help you through it, and then figuring out how to get through the gates and various kinds of gates, even in a simple track on Liftoff, can be really challenging, especially if you don't have a proper radio, which I didn't. But that's something you have to do first, right? You can't just pick up a controller, pick up a radio, and immediately go into doing Rubik's Cubes or inverted yaw spins or any of that stuff. That's not going to happen, and you can't expect to do that. If you can't fly smoothly, then you can't fly. So you need to spend a lot of time on the basics and understanding how your quad moves in the air. And that's something that comes with, I'm going to say, hundreds of hours and definitely hundreds of packs. I don't even have enough of that yet to truly say that I've got the basics mastered. I'm about 50 hours or 60 hours into the simulators, which I use various ones now, and about 60 hours of real-life stick time across various quads. So I have 120 hours, and we'll get to how that stick time translates in another point that I want to make later. But it's hundreds of hours to get to a point where you've mastered this skill. You can't expect yourself to just start doing flippy floppies and be terrific at it out of the gate. If you do, your expectations are going to suffer, and you're probably going to want to give up on the hobby. So don't put yourself in that situation. What you should expect when you walk up to your first FPV drone or start your first simulator is to get an understanding of how the quad works up to the point where you can smoothly control your aircraft. Once you can smoothly control your aircraft and steer it in the direction that you are intending to steer it and get it to go there and understand how that works, then it's time to start on the cool stuff. And you can just drill those all day long after, and you will get good at it. But if you don't start with the basics and you just barely can fly before you start trying to do your first Rubik's Cube, you're going to be disappointed down the road, because you're going to want to go hit those basics again, and it's going to be incredibly boring because your Rubik's Cubes or inverted yaw spins or anything else are not going to look smooth. You just don't have enough stick time. You don't have enough experience to be understanding how those tricks should function and how your aircraft functions through them. So, again, the expectation shouldn't be that you're going to immediately do tricks. You should try to work on flying smoothly before you ever go down that road. The third thing that I wish someone had told me is not to change up your gear. So it's really cool when you get into FPV. There's a lot of really neat things you can buy. There's a lot of variability. So again, the way I started was in a simulator, and then I bought a Novice 4 kit, and then I built my own 5-inch drones. I built the Rotor Riot CL1 kit, the analog kit. I built 2 of those, actually. And there's some variance there, like you put different props on it. You can try different battery packs. You can run different camera angles. You can change your rates. There's all kinds of things that make that quad different and unique to you, right? The problem with that as a beginner is that you don't understand necessarily how those things are going to impact the flight characteristics of the quadcopter. So let's, for instance, say you get like a Nazgul 5 V2, perfect, great bind and fly quad, great beginner quad, and you get a radio and you get your goggles, and you go out and fly it, and you put 10 packs through it, and you think, man, I'm gonna try some different props. Okay, so you put different props on it, and that changes the flight characteristic of the aircraft. But you don't necessarily understand how it's changed, if it's good or bad, or what your style of flying is even going to be yet. So how do you know if that is in the right direction? You just can't possibly make that judgment call yet. What you should do is stick with what you have. So that Nazgul came with props on it. You should buy replacement props that are the same size and pitch. They may not be the same brand, but buy ones that are the same size and pitch. Buy the same battery pack, and don't try 5 or 6 different kinds. Buy one that's rated well, and buy a few of them. Set your camera angle somewhere comfortable that you know you can fly smoothly, and leave it there. Don't start adjusting your camera angle. Find some rates. If you worked in the sim and you're using default Betaflight rates or whatever the sim was using and that's working for you, don't change them up yet. If you've already done that or have some idea that you want to adjust your rates, just make sure you don't change them very often. You need to understand how the quadcopter flies and why it's doing the things it does before you can make those judgment calls. And by changing all the variables, you're never going to get used to your quad enough to understand it fully. So you're really just doing yourself a disservice by changing a bunch of things. Even if it's cool, like you want to go get some Mr. Steel props from Ethix or something because they're cool looking. Well, that's not necessarily a good idea yet. You need to really have mastered that quad and fully understand its flight characteristic before you know how you want to change it. You don't even know what you like yet. So stick with one thing, don't change it so much, and learn it really well before you move on. The fourth thing that I wish I had known, and I will admit I violated this rule thoroughly, is that you don't need to PID tune your quad. It doesn't need to happen yet. Again, you don't fully understand the mechanics of the quad, and not everybody is going to fully understand how a PID controller works, or the relationship between the P and the D term, or what I term does, or feed forward, or any of that stuff, all that terminology. You don't need to do that yet. Betaflight, and I'm going to speak especially for Betaflight because I haven't tried KISS or Flight 1 or EmuFlight or any of those other firmwares, but I can speak to Betaflight. It flies well out of the box. So the PID controller is designed by default for 5-inch quads of a general size and general weight, general prop size, and general prop pitch to just work with default PIDs. So before you think you need to tune your quad, you should learn how the quad acts on default PIDs. Otherwise, you're not going to understand what changes to your PIDs are actually doing to the flight characteristics of the quad. You're going to probably get some prop wash, it's going to be over filtered, whatever. You've probably heard those terms in videos that you're watching, but as a lot of people say, the quad is perfectly fine at about 80 to 85% of its function, right? So right out of the box, you're getting 80 to 85% of the performance of the quad. Tuning gives you that other 10 or 15%, and then there's a little bit of variance based on the skill. But tuning gives you the last push into the performance of the quad. You can't possibly at this point understand what that does for you or how it affects the flight characteristics because you haven't spent enough time with your quad. So don't focus on PID tuning. Don't buy a new quad and because you see all these videos on YouTube about how you should PID tune your quad, don't start down that road yet. You have so much to learn and absorb before you really need to be talking about that last 15%. Betaflight is going to fly just fine out of the box unless you've got some super weird quad that you built, and then that's a whole other discussion. But if you buy a Nazgul 5 V2 or a Diatone Roma F5 V2, you buy those bind and fly quads, which a lot of people start out with, and you run it on default PIDs or whatever PIDs it came with out of the box, it's going to be perfectly fine. You don't have to go push the last 15% out yet. So don't try. Just work on flying smooth and getting the basics down. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about that I wish someone had told me when I first started in FPV is that you should try to find a way to ingrain yourself in the FPV community. So it's a steep learning curve getting into FPV. Sometimes it can be really lonely. So in my case, I actually did find some pilots locally that fly, but at the time when I first started, didn't have any pilot friends. I didn't have any connections to pilots in the area, and it's a very lonely process. It's just me watching Joshua Bardwell's 1,000 videos and everything I could find on Rotor Riot and a million other channels, and absorbing hundreds of hours of YouTube content on my own and trying to decipher it, while also spending a lot of time in a simulator with new hardware that I just got, building quads, trying to decipher all this stuff, right? And in my case, I'm able to do that. I kind of work in an industry where troubleshooting through things and figuring out complex things is something I do on a daily basis, but that's not everybody. And the easiest way for most people to get through those tough situations is through networking with other people. So there's a lot of resources out there. Even if you don't have a local flying group, there's a lot of internet resources that can give you advice. It's a place where you can go with questions, even noob questions. A lot of pilots on Facebook communities, like the Rotor Riot community, Elevate, great community that Cricket started, and Joshua Bardwell's Patreon, his Patreon chat inside of Discord, as well as a lot of other pilots. I'm on Joshua Bardwell's and Bot Grinder's Patreon chats inside of Discord, and they're great places to connect with other pilots around the world and ask questions. Those people, some of them have been flying for many years and have seen a lot of situations, and you can ask their opinion and learn from them. And even if you're too shy to talk about it, or too shy to ask, or you feel like it's a stupid question and you don't want to ask it, you can at least read. So you can see what other people are asking, and you can learn from their troubleshooting processes. That's a great way to learn things. You can watch videos about people that had problems and troubleshooting through it. Joshua Bardwell actually does a lot of those, where he takes a real world problem and then tells you how to troubleshoot through it. Absorb that information and connect in the community. And then at some point, start asking questions when you're comfortable. And then down the road at some point, start answering questions and helping people work through problems that are in the same position you're in today. So it's really important in the FPV community that we emphasize the community portion of things. Sometimes it's hard to do. Sometimes there's toxicity in the community and other things, and you'll find that out. Even in your first 3 months, you'll find that out. But it's really important that we stay a tight-knit community and support each other, because we want this hobby to grow. We don't want it to be something that's so hard to get into and the learning curve is so steep that we never see another new pilot, or people give up on it after 30 days. We want this FPV community and this hobby to continue to grow. We want companies to be able to make products for us and know that their investment is going to pay off because the community is growing and they're definitely going to sell new hardware. If we let it dwindle out because we can't form a community around each other, then it's our fault when nobody wants to make us anything. And we definitely want them to make us cool new things, like DJI and their digital, which I've never flown. But that kind of stuff comes from us having a community around FPV. And FPV is more than just a hobby. It is a lifestyle. It's something that in order to be proficient at and understand fully, you have to love it and have a passion. So definitely let that be shared with other members of this community. It is so important that we focus on that with each other and drive that as a whole in the future, especially with all of the regulations we could potentially be facing and different things happening inside of the community. It is more important than ever that we become one with each other and we get along and we share information. For sure, find a way to integrate yourself into the community. Alright, well, that is the 5 tips that I wish someone had told me whenever I first started FPV. Again, my FPV story is kind of lonely. I started out on my own. I just woke up one day and thought, man, it'd be really cool if you could fly a drone and see from the viewpoint of the drone. And I had no idea that people were already doing it. I think a lot of people start out that way. So I looked up a bunch of YouTube videos, and it just instantly was something I had to do. And I've loved it ever since. And even in the first 12 weeks, I have progressed so much. It is so terrific. I love every minute of it. I just want to put more and more and more stick time in. Yeah, I just can't get enough of it. So I hope to continue to do it for a long, long time. I hope that you continue to do it with me. And if you're just now starting out, please leave a comment below and tell me what got you into the hobby, what you're excited about, anything you want. Let's talk about FPV. Let's be a community. I'll be more than happy to read and reply to your comments. I'm excited to hear from you all. If you'd like, I also have a Patreon that you can support. That'll be linked down in the description. It's just you can support me for $1. I'm probably going to start a Discord server, so if you want to be part of that, it would be really cool. Get on my Patreon and we'll start up a Discord server, and we'll have chats about anything you want to chat about. It'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, I appreciate you all. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.